Welcome to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and today we're doing another deck tech. Continuing on with Commander Legends, I'm probably going to make about 20 deck techs from this set alone. And since it's fresh and everybody's looking for ways that they can use these new commanders, I think it's good that I concentrate on that right now. And I got a ton of ideas. The deck today is a deck that I have in a strategy that I've been wanting to use for a while. And I tried it a couple different times with a couple different commanders. It didn't work out so well. It is a difficult deck to play, and you'll find out why. In my style, I like doing different, unique, interesting things. You know, nothing too crazy, nothing too powerful, just fun and interesting. Always lots of value. Value is always, that's my big thing, is value. I love value. I think value wins games in casual commander because you are typically the game's going long. So yes, you can have that big crater hoof play and just blow everyone out. If somebody stifles that, literally, then what do you have? You run out of steam real quick. Value decks, just you keep getting stuff and you keep getting stuff and you just grind people out of the game, and that's kind of like the style that I like to play personally. This deck is a partner deck. The typically with partners, you have a primary partner and a secondary partner. The primary partner here is Livio. We're building this deck around Livio. This guy is fantastic. I didn't really talk about him. In fact, I don't think I talked about him at all in my Commander Legends review. The reason being is because A, I knew I would be doing this deck tech and I would be talking about him lots, and B, he's sort of one of those commanders like Sakashima or Rogue Rack where he sort of just can partner with anybody depending on the colors you want, right? I mean, you're going to be doing sort of a blink strategy, and blink can go in a lot of different colors. You could do a white-green one, a white-blue one. Bant is obviously a great one to go in. For me, I wanted to be in blue for a couple of reasons. I needed to be in blue actually in order for this deck to work. And also I wanted a commander that, preferably has an ETB so I can blink it. And Sakashima was perfect for that. So this is a Livio and Sakashima deck. Sakashima being, I don't think Sakashima is going to be a primary partner commander in a lot of decks. I think Sakashima is going to be more of an assist or just a helper. It's great in this deck because, clone effects are great for blinking because, you clone something, you blink it, comes back, clone something different when something better shows up. Obviously, we're going with a blink strategy. In essence, on the surface, that's what we're doing. But to me, just playing a straight up blink deck, that's boring. I don't know. I love ETB creatures. That's sort of my bread and butter. Eternal Witness is probably my favorite creature of all time. It's value on a stick. You're getting a creature and you're getting an effect, and being able to blink it is obviously the best way to go with stuff like that. So we are doing a lot of that, but we're not only doing that. So first of all, we'll get to the just straight up ETB stuff. We have a lot of creatures that we're going to get payoff for. Reflector Mage, as I said, is a super obvious one. Spellseeker is a super obvious one. I'm actually surprised I don't see this in more decks. It seems like an auto include in every blue deck to me, but whatever. Snapcaster Mage, Deputy of Detention. Deputy of Detention, is particularly important here, and I'll get to that later. Skyclave Apparition from Zendikar Rising is a great addition. Elite Guard Mage, Cloud Blazer, again, just great value, great cards that you want to be blinking. Soul Herder is obviously, it's a Conjurer's Closet. If you think about Livio, we're constantly exiling creatures. That Soul Herder is going to get big, it's going to get huge. And then just some big, Duplicant, Phyrexian Ingester, Agent of Treachery, they're just going to be great for having us dealing with issues we might have, things that our opponents might be doing. Other than that, we want other blink effects, right? Mist Meadow Witch is a no-brainer in this deck. I also have Voidwalk. I also have Gale Powder Mage and Identity Thief. Now, these cards are good for blinking our creatures, but they can also blink our opponent's creatures, and this is the important part. I don't have a lot of the typical blink effects that you would have in decks like Ephemerate or Momentary Blink. that might seem like obvious auto includes in this deck. And the reason why is because I want all of my blink effects to be able to affect any creature, not just my creatures. I want to be able to blink my opponent's creatures. Why? Because of the sneaky little thing that I'm doing in this deck. The crux of this deck really, and what this deck is sort of built around, is Containment Priest. Containment Priest is, and I don't love building my deck around a card that isn't my commander. And this deck isn't. This deck can do perfectly fine if I never get my Containment Priest. However, if I get my Containment Priest, my strategy changes. This is a deck that has several different strategies. And a lot of the cards in this deck become really, really good with Containment Priest in play. Also, it's always good to have backups. So, first of all, I have Recruit of the Guard so I can go get my Containment Priest. But also, Hollowed Moonlight, it's a one-shot, but it does do the same effect. And sometimes we want a one-shot. Sometimes we want to blink our creatures, but we don't want our opponents to get their creatures back. So we're going to cast Hollowed Moonlight to screw them, and then the next turn we can blink our stuff and we'll be okay. Mistcaller is another card that does that. It's another one-shot that we can just use if we want to. Now, why are we going to be doing this? We're going to be doing this because what I realized about Livio is, you know, even though the effect, the ability there says choose another target creature, its controller may exile. Obviously, if you do this to your opponent's creatures, they're just going to be like, nope, sorry, I'll just leave my creature where it is. However, if we steal their creatures, then we can do it. So Domineering Will, for example, Domineering Will, we snatch 3 of our opponent's creatures, and then we can just exile all of them. And they stay there. We just don't bring them back because we control them. If they ever do come back, however, they go back to under the owner's control, right? Sower of Temptation is another fantastic card in this deck where we can steal our opponent's creatures, and then if maybe Sower of Temptation is going to, you know, go away, you know, in response we can blink their creature into non-existence and they're not going to get it back, right? Because it's going to be in exile. The absolute superstar in this deck is Willbreaker. Willbreaker is so good in this deck. It's good in a lot of decks that have repeatable effects like this. We can target our opponent's creatures, and whether they choose to exile them or not is irrelevant, because as soon as they become the target of that spell, we control them. So we're going to gain control of their creature before Livio's ability resolves, right? So what's going to happen is Willbreaker's ability will resolve. We'll gain control of their creature because it's become a target of an ability we control. Then it'll ask us if we want to exile, because now we are the controller of that creature. And, you know, probably not. Probably we'll just keep it. But we can exile it if we want, or we can leave it in play. And then if our Willbreaker dies or is about to die, you know, someone wants to swords your Willbreaker, then in response we can exile their creature because we still control it and they won't get it back. Again, same sort of effect. That all being said, okay, there is going to be times when, okay, we're going to exile a bunch of creatures with Livio, and then we're going to want to use his second ability and return card, right? So we're going to have a Cloud Blazer and a Duplicant in exile that we want to get back with Livio. But if we get those cards back, then our opponents get their cards back as well. Again, these are difficult combos to pull off. However, this is where the Containment Priest, the Mistcaller, the Hollowed Moonlight come into effect. And we're like, okay, maybe what we want to do is we want to cast the Containment Priest and then return all of their creatures to play, which will then all get exiled. And there's lots of other effects. Again, Mistmeadow Witch, Identity Thief, Gale Powder Mage, Voidwalk. These cards are exiling a creature. So we can use it on ourselves to blink our Cloud Blazer, or we can, you know, Mistmeadow Witch our opponent's creature with a Containment Priest in play, and it doesn't come back. We're just exiling creatures every time, right? Every time Identity Thief attacks, he just exiles one of our opponent's creatures permanently, right? So that's the other, you know, there's sort of two strategies happening here. Whenever I make a deck like this, I'm always prepared to go one strategy or the other. whatever cards I happen to be drawing and whatever happens to be working and whatever happens my opponents happen to be doing, if that strategy, I'm either going to go the I'll blink my own creatures strategy and forget the Containment Priest, or if I get the Containment Priest and I have a Mist-Meta Witch out or something, then now I can just go to town with that combo, right? So that's why playing a deck like this can be difficult, right? Because you have to be careful, because you're going to go to blink your own Cloud Blazer, you're going to forget there's a Containment Priest in play and he's going to stay in exile and he's gone forever, right? So you just got to be careful with that. It is a high level of difficulty to play this deck for sure. However, that being said, there are some really, really great things that you can do. I'll just name off some of the really cool things you can do with this deck. Vanish into Memory is a great card in this deck. Vanish into Memory is a great card in general that doesn't get played nearly enough. This can be a huge blowout. First of all, exiling a token creature does not come back. So you draw cards equal to that creature's power, and then you'll discard. You'll just draw a ton of cards. Not only are you exiling their creature, you're going to get a ton of cards. A lot of times, exiling someone's commander with Vanish into Memory, they don't want to risk it. They don't want to risk that they might not get it back, right? Because if you Vanish into Memory their commander and then cast a Containment Priest, their commander's gone forever, right? And essentially that's what you want to do, right? The idea here is I Vanish into Memory your Vorinclex, I draw 7 cards, and then because I have a Containment Priest in play, now your Vorinclex is gone and I get to draw 7 and keeps it. Like, that is a huge swing, right? That's the kind of play that, yes, it might take a little bit to set up, but it's so devastating to your opponent and beneficial to you that it's totally worth it. Another big one, Gather Specimens. Another card that, it's this quirky card that no one ever plays that can be an absolute blowout. This card can just be a desertion if you want it to be, okay? If a creature would come into play under an opponent's control this turn, so that means casting a creature. Your opponent casts Vorinclex, you cast Gather Specimen, and it just turns into a desertion. You just gain control of it. That's it. So you can do that. You can just one-shot with a Gather Specimens. Even better, your opponent casts, I don't know, maybe an Avenger of Zendikar, and in response to that trigger, you could just steal the Avengers of Zendikar, or if they have a ton of lands, maybe you Gather Specimens, in response to the trigger, and you get all those plant tokens because it's a creature that would enter the battlefield under their control. There's just a lot of ways to use this card. In this deck, though, difficult to set up, but you can do our Willbreaker, Soar of Temptation, Domineering Will, steal your opponent's creatures and exile them all. And then, when you're good and ready, you tap your Livio and return all creatures to play. And then in response, you Gather Specimens. And all of those creatures, instead of going back under their owner's control, enter under your control, right? Huge, huge blowout. Just a huge game swing play that is almost assuredly just going to win you the game, right? Another neat card in this deck is Proteus Staff. Proteus Staff, again, we're gonna put target creature on the bottom of its owner's library. Again, we can use this on us. We can cast our Cloud Blazer, and we've already drawn 2 cards, gain 2 life, and so it's just a 2/2 flyer. Who cares? And so we can tuck that Cloud Blazer and then get something, get a Reflector Mage instead. It's just good value. Ideally though, we have our Containment Priest in play, and we're just going to start tucking our opponent's creatures. And then the creature they flip off the top didn't get cast, right? It came into play without being cast, so it's going to get exiled. So not only are we tucking one of their creatures, and also obviously tucking is, putting it on the bottom of the library is great against commanders in general, because people are just going, when you tuck an opponent's commander, they're not going to put it under their library. They're going to put it back to the command zone. So you're basically just killing their commander. And then the creature that gets flipped, it gets exiled as an added bonus, right? Just fantastic, great, cool little combo. It's probably not going to stay in play for too long, but while it's there, you can do some serious damage. Again, Gale Powder Mage is great in this deck. I can attack, blink my, my Cloud Blazer or my Reflector Mage, and then get value there. Or if I have my Containment Priest in play, I can just attack, and he just reads whenever Gale Powder Mage attacks, exile target creature an opponent controls. That's super powerful. That's so good. And just to really take things into crazy town, Training Grounds, we're in blue. Training Grounds is so good in this deck. Livio's abilities both just become 1 white. 1 white to exile a creature, 1 white to return them all. And not to be understated here, Livio's ability is not, you're not sacrificing them to return everything to play. You can just keep doing it. So if I have Training Grounds in play, I can go white, 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 exile 3 of my creatures, and then just 1 more white. So I need 4 white mana to blink all 3 creatures and then return them all to play immediately. And then I can do it again the next turn. And then I can do it. I can just keep on doing that. That's so much value. You know, this is one of those decks that, yeah, it can fizzle a little. It just has lots of good cards, right? Cloudblazer is going to be a good card no matter what. Reflector Mage is going to be a good card no matter what. Mangara of Karandor is another really neat little card with this. This is one of those sort of timing stack issues that you really need to know what you're doing in order for this to make this work. Mangara has a unique ability in that his ability is tap, and this is, when you talk about the rules of the game, that colon is so important, right? A colon, when you're talking about an activated ability, a colon is whatever happens before the colon is the activation cost. Whatever happens after is the effect. So exile Mangara of Karandor and target permanent. Exiling Mangara is not part of the cost. It's part of the resolution. So what you do is you tap your Mangara and target an opponent's permanent, right? You target their Vorinclex, let's say. Then you hold priority and you respond to your own activation. And you respond by blinking. You Livio, right? You pay 2 mana and you exile your Mangara with an Aegis counter on it before his ability resolves, right? So you exile him, then his ability is still on the stack. So even though he's not on the board, doesn't matter. His ability will resolve and it'll say, okay, we're going to exile Mangara of Karandor and that permanent. The Vorinclex gets exiled. Mangara's already in the exile, so it doesn't do anything. That part just goes away. But because Mangara has an Aegis counter on him, you can now bring him back, right? Just a neat little combo that goes with Livio. Other than that, there's I like Afara in this deck just because we are blinking lots of creatures. You're getting that other card draw. You can load up more on the blink style of effect if you want. You can put in, I have Okeomancer in here too, just a great card. Amphin Mutineer from the new set is good in here. Being able to exile creatures is great. Also, giving our opponent that 4/3 token is like almost nothing, right? Giving your opponents tokens, this is another added bonus to this deck. I attack with my Gale Powder Mage, I exile the token, and it doesn't come back because it's a token, right? So I'm just getting rid of that. So they really don't get any benefit at all from that. Even better, Vanish into Memory. I exile their token. Vanish into Memory essentially becomes draw 4 cards for 4 mana because I exile their 4/3 token, draw 4 cards, and that's it, right? That's a great card in this deck. Eerie Interlude I put in here. I like Eerie Interlude because one, it can just save your board from being destroyed, and also it nitpicks, right? You can exile any number of target creatures, so you can pick the ones you want to exile. So that's good. So you can sort of get around that Containment Priest if you want. And then just some value cards, Wall of Omens. I have Phantasmal Image in here. I have Knight of the White Orchard because we're going to want to get lands anyway. And then, your typical control cards. Time Wipe is good in this deck. Time Wipe isn't fantastic. Playing 5 mana just to destroy all creatures is meh. I would much rather play a Cleansing Nova because then I have the option of artifacts and enchantments. However, just returning that card to our hand is relevant because we do have a lot of ETB creatures. And then again, flesh it out how you want. The removal you want, the counter spells you want. I like Dovin's Veto. You flesh it out how you prefer to play, maybe depending on your play group. And then the lands, the only ones that I really want to mention here are, first of all, Minamo, School at Water's Edge. Another card that should be in way more decks. If your commander is tapping to do anything and in blue, and there's a lot of those, this needs to be this should be in your deck. Absolutely, right? So it's in here. We probably won't even be using it that much. Although, if we do, again, if we have training grounds in play, man, we can go to town with Livio. We can really go to town. I mean, we can pay one, blink just a Cloud Blazer, and then pay one to get it back, and then untap with Manamo and do it again on our opponent's end step. By the way, also Mist Meta Witch goes to town with training grounds. It now only costs 2 mana to exile a creature, right? So good. Really fun, interesting deck. Like I said, it's tough to play. You really got to be aware of your board. Okay, I mean, even me, I'm an experienced Magic player. I made the deck. There, I'm playing it, and I will accidentally, blink my Cloud Blazer, and my Containment Priest will be in play, and it'll get exiled. So you just got to be careful though there, right? Because you basically have a bit of a nombo where you have one strategy that is opposing the other strategy. But if you do it right, they work really, really well together. So just lots of really neat things. This is the kind of deck that you're going to want to play a lot and get used to the little intricacies with each and every card. I didn't talk about Sakashima at all. Obviously it's not super important to the deck. It gives me blue, but also it is, I want to copy my Cloud Blazer. I want to copy my Snapcaster Mage, right? You just copy those effects. I want another Agent of Treachery, right? And by the way, Agent of Treachery, that second ability at the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more, that's very doable in this deck because you are going to be stealing your opponent's stuff, right? Lots of fun, great deck. I'm glad I could do a deck tech on it. I hope you enjoy playing it as much as I do. So that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in.